local veterans that served in either Korean or Vietnam War, and they're going to share their experiences with you. Now, this event came about because Richard Jackson, over there, he volunteers at the library all the time, and he helps me a lot with programs. He fixes sewing machines for our sewing program. He put up a lovely display of his wife's hand-stitched crafts and goods, and he helps with lots of programs. And he said, "Hey, Jessica, why don't we have a Veterans Day program?" And I thought it was a great idea. So thank you. But then he called all his friends and said, "You got to come down to the library and tell your story." So that's why we're here tonight, to celebrate the friendship and our veterans and our community. So I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to enjoy. But I am going to call Mr. Bennett up here.
Oh, me.
And he's our glorious host who graciously offered to MC the event. So I'm going to pass the mic to Mr. Bennett. Thank you.
Folks, I probably don't need this at all.
Just maybe clip it down here.
Yes, dear. I'm used to saying that to my wife. I'll say it to you, too. First of all, let me thank all of you for being here tonight. I'm grateful. And I know most of you, and some that I don't, I will before the night's over. So we're glad to have everyone. We're glad that you came out. We are here for one purpose, and that is to honor these men who are heroes, local heroes. I am saddened that we don't have a lady, because believe me, the women deserve just as much honor as do all of the men who served our country. I'm going to ask you at this time, if you would please stand and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I told you I was going to be quick. Dana's back there with a stick that's got a hook on it, because when I normally speak, I won't shut up, and she can't get me to sit down. So she's ready for me tonight. Can you advance that, Dana? Or whoever. Okay. This is interesting to nobody but me, because this is at least a part of my family. And as you can see, my wife's family and my family are service people. This is me. I know I was never that young. Don't say anything, Lord. But that's me before Vietnam. This is my father. My father, Odie Bennett, who was born and raised here in Murray County, and he joined the Army in 1939, 2 years before World War II, and he served under Patton. He was a tank commander at the Battle of the Bulge, and went all the way across Europe, and it was just amazing, the things that he saw and the things that he did until the end of the war. By the way, I had a sister who was born and was 5 years old before he ever saw her. We didn't have Facebook and what do you call it, all the social media in those days. This is my father-in-law, for those who might recognize him, Mr. Harry Edwards, my wife's father. He was in the Army. He joined in 1943, stayed 3.5 years, got out in 45 when the war was over. This was him in later years. He lived to be 97 years old. He's the old gentleman who sat on the porch across from the funeral home and waved to everybody for 20 years. He was known as Mr. Waver. He was an honored veteran. This is his son, Harry Edwards Jr. Harry joined the Air Force, spent 20 years, got out of the Air Force, came back to Spring Hill, went to work for Stevens Aviation in Nashville, and worked another 20 years with airplanes. So he spent 40 years of his life working with airplanes. This is my other brother-in-law, which has a unique story. This is William Edwards. William and I were best friends in high school, and so we got together before we graduated in 1965. And he said, "What are you going to do after high school?" I said, "I don't have the slightest idea." And he said, "I'm going to join the Air Force because I have a brother who's in the Air Force and loves it." I said, "Fine, I'll go with you." So we went together and joined the Air Force on the buddy plan. We stayed together the first 6 months that we were enlisted. A year and a half later, I just happened to marry his sister. So now that's my life up to this point. I did have another uncle, my dad's next youngest brother. There were 8 members in his family. James Bennett. James was 2 years younger than my dad. He also joined the Army and served in World War II as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have any pictures of him. All of these men that you see on the screen are deceased except me. And I might be close, I don't know. The way my wife's looking at me, it may be tonight. We are so grateful and so thankful for these men who have come tonight to speak to you, to tell their story. I served in Vietnam in 1967. I served in the Philippines. I served in Thailand. And I served in 2 countries that I can't tell you about because I had a top secret security clearance, and if the government finds out, they'll still probably put me in jail. So I'm not going to tell you about those countries. It was an interesting time. It was a war that young men fought, and old men limited us as to what we could do in that fight. And I hope and pray we never do it again. Ever. Fighting is for young men, and governing is for old men, and the two should never meet. I was a radio operator. Or so they told me when I enlisted. But very shortly thereafter, they said, "Hey, we're going to cross-train you into radar. And while we're at it, we're going to put you in a helicopter and teach you how to fire a 50 caliber machine gun out of the door." I didn't want to do any of those things. But you know what? When you're in the military, as these men will attest to, you do what you're told to do. It's called orders. There's a thing called chain of command, and you follow. So I'm so glad to have these men here tonight so that they can tell their stories. I'm going to call them up one at a time, and we are going to start with Jeff Rector. Jeff, if you come up.
I'm Jeff Rector. I forgot what I was going to say. I was in the United States Army. I stayed 3 years. Didn't want to do that, but I did. I finished as E4, finished as E4. But me and my old buddy here, Edward Harmon, and another Jimmy Brown, was talking one. I guess it's in the end of January 1962. We was talking about going in the Army. We didn't know what we was going to do, nothing. So we did. All three of us joined on the buddy plan, like Phil said, which didn't last long. But we went to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. All three of us did, and that was an experience. Believe me, it was an experience. So one night after basic training, we'd been in there several days. And I asked Everett. I said, Everett, why did you make me doing this? He said, you made me join. So we still argue about who joined what. But Everett got out about the same time, I did. Jimmy Brown, he made a career out of it. But unfortunately, they put me on the ship, which I don't like ships, Marvin. I lost 10 pounds in 6 days going to Germany. That was the sickest I've ever been in my life. I said, you have your ships, I don't want one. But I got to Germany, and I went to the 7th Army, 48th Infantry. And all my training was infantry, ground pounder. And I went to a mechanized infantry where we had armored personnel carriers and tanks and wheeled vehicles. Well, about 6 months, I stayed in the line platoon in the infantry for about 6 months, and they changed names of outfits just like a lot of them do. We went to the 8th Army, 39th Infantry, and for some reason they changed me and put me in the maintenance, which I guess was a good thing. And I said, how did I get into maintenance? And they said, you made good on the mechanical scores. I said, okay. So I went to work on the job as a wheel vehicle mechanic. And I stayed that way the whole time I was in. Well, we'd go to the field a whole lot. Well, I went to Germany. I didn't go to Vietnam. The Lord blessed me because I volunteered. If I hadn't volunteered when I did, I know where I'd be. And I'm glad I did volunteer at that time. I didn't at the time I was in there. But we'd go to the field a lot. I mean, especially when it got cold, that's when they wanted you to go. I remember when President Kennedy got killed, they went stupid. They had every at 3 o'clock in the morning, we had all of our equipment. They issued ammunition, and we all went to the field, waiting on what the Russians was going to do. So we didn't know. We didn't know what was going on. We just doing what Phil said. You did what you told to do. But like I said, we went to the field a lot. Of course, we wrestled. I loved to wrestle, and we did that. That's what we did a lot in the field. We was walking in the woods. Several of us boys was, and this boy was from a big city. Never been in the country nowhere. Some old country boy. And I knew I wasn't scared of bugs, snakes, none of that stuff. This boy was terrified of snakes, spiders, bugs, anything. Any kind of animal. Well, we was walking and I told him, I said, you know, this country's got a lot of wild boars. He said, yeah. I said, you know what they do? I said, they get around and put their tail around a limb and they'll down on you when you come to that. Well, this old boy, he said, really? I said, yeah. Well, it couldn't happen no better. A limb fell out somewhere, and that boy took off running. Now, he was a weightlifter, a big old boy, scared to death. We couldn't catch him. We tried to tell him just a limb. We tried to tell him we joked, but he didn't. But I was bad about playing tricks on that same boy. We was in another time in the field, and it was cold, and we was in sleep bags. Well, I'd put a limb, a little piece of fur, down in the bottom of his sleeping bag. Well, he crawled down in that sleeping bag. I mean, y'all know what a mummy bag is, but it come up around your head. Well, this boy got in that bag, and he scooted down in there, and just about 2 or 3 seconds, he'd come out of that bag in the air. We ain't figured out how he done that yet. But he come out in the air. So that I'm guilty of playing a lot of tricks like that. But anyway, I finished up the tour, came home on the same ship I went over with. I was sick again for 6 more days. I got home, stayed around here a little while. I got married. My wife Wanda had 2 boys and worked for a Union Carbide for 31 years. I retired. Didn't like to be retired, so I started working somewhere else. I went to Franklin 4 years at the car station in Lowe's house. And then I went for work for a veterinarian for 19 years. And I quit that. And I said, well, I'm fine to be retired. When you get 81 years old, I'm retired. So, in the meantime, in 1993, I started doing ancestral study on my family. And I found out I had 20, more than 20, and Confederate veterans. And so I joined the Confederate, Sons of Confederate Veterans, and I started reenacting. I've done reenacting for about 25 years. I finally had to quit that, got too old and couldn't do it. So, but my unit folded up, and we all got old and didn't nobody to come. So we folded up, sold all equipment, and now here I am. And I'm through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Jeff made one statement that's absolutely true in the military. They're stupid. Pardon me, young people. Y'all can't say that, okay? Our next speaker will be Donnie Walters. His rank was TE3. Very interesting story. Donnie, come on up. Let me pin you. Well, I can't pin you. Yeah. Sorry.
Like you, I talk to that.
There you go.
But as I said, I'm Donnie Walters, and I was raised out here. My dad had a country store between, if you know, it's either what the Church of Christ, the Baptist Church, and the Church of Christ is in 1934 and 33. And anyway, went to school out at Theta 8 years. We had the preachers when I started out there. You know, my older brother was a year and a half older than me. Down at the store, they called me his little buddy and his buddy and his buddy. But my Aunt Ollie Gucci, some of you met when she came to St. Hill, mother told her that I wasn't supposed to go to school with his buddy. And anyway, Donald Jack was in the 3rd grade in the same room. Then Ollie went to the board and wrote D-O-N-N-Y and D-O-N. She said, this is Donnie and this is Don. What do you want me to call him? I graduated from high school over here, Donnie Walters instead of Donald. But anyway, I came 4 years over here and graduated, and I wanted to go to work for the telephone company, and I kept going down to Columbia and graduated in 49, the rest of that year, and 50. I went down to where they were hiring at the telephone company. At that time, it was in an old house where the library in Columbia is now. Miss Hollywood was in there, and finally, December of 50, she said, son, get your service time in and come back to see us. I walked over to the post office and went up to the 3rd floor and volunteered for the Navy right before Christmas, and said, well, when do you want to go? I said, well, wait till after Christmas. So January the 3rd, here I was, I'd hardly ever been out of the state, moved to Chicago, put me in boot camp up there for 10 weeks. And while I was there, I was walking around in snow up under my armpit. But that same January was when the sleep break was here in Columbia. 31 was all laid out. And they were writing me, and mother was writing me and telling me how bad it was. I couldn't sympathize with them because but we got through the boot camp. They put us on the troop train. Several sailors. We had it all to ourselves. Took us to San Francisco, Treasure Island. They did give us 15 days leave, and I did manage to get back to Columbia. Someone told me and some others is on my in boot camp with me, went to going to the same ship, and it told us about a flight. If we get out to this air base out there outside of San Francisco, they'd give us a free flight down in Augusta, Georgia. And we did. And we paid 75 cents for a sack lunch. And we flew down there and got us out, and we went to hitchhiking and got back up to Chattanooga. I got tired and I caught the trailways and come in that way back to Columbia. But anyway, I got back home. I went back to San Francisco at Treasure Island, and they put us on a troop ship to go. It took us 18 days to go to Japan, and that was on April the 13th when we left. The ship was that I was attached to was Honorable J. Japan destroyer here, and it had been in Korea from the start, and actually in November of 1950. Is when the Korean War started, and they were assigned to that over there, escorting carriers and other things in bombardment. And just a little bit about how we got on that ship. We went into Yokohama, and then they transported us down to Yokosuka. And then they said the ship was coming into Sasebo. Well, that'd be about like if you're going from New York to Miami. Down through there, they put us on a Japanese train that they used in World War II, and we went right through Hiroshima, and that was in 1951, and where it had been bombed, they hadn't cleaned that up yet, and we weren't allowed to get off, but we did go through Hiroshima. Later on, another time, we come into the other place on the other side of that. But anyway, we got to Sasebo and had us on an old tanker down there, and then the ship came in and we got on it. And so got back out to sea, and the main thing that we did out there is that we were escorting carriers, and at times we had to go in and do some bombarding. You can see these guns up here on that. There's three of them on that, twin guns, and in the deck force, everybody was put in the deck force or engineering down as the sniper called in the holes on that destroyer, 300 something people. And I like the deck force okay, but I wanted out of it. And thank goodness that when I was over here in school, I took 2 years of typing under Ms. Wright. Some of y'all went with Ms. Wright. David, I'm sorry, I said not Ms. Wright. Ms. Wise. I'll get it right. Ms. Wright, you and I had her 1 year in biology, but that's what we can do. But David was in the class with us. But anyway, I took that typing, and first time a job came open on the ship, you bid on it, and I bid on one in the communications. And it was a radioman and a teleman. But I got the teleman job, and it's because I could type. And I was with that, and then after that, I didn't have to go to general quarters to the gun. I just stayed in the teletype room. One of our other jobs in there, you was also a mailman. We were real popular. When we mailed C, we get back there, and another guy would take that up. And all the time, they're talking about that. The destroyer, it went in there and several different places on the coast of Korea and helped it out. One time they transferred, they escorted a battleship in there when they were going back into Korea and taking the troops in there. We also escorted the troop ships in there. Back up to that 18 days on that ship we went overseas in. There was 3 levels on there. One level had Air Force, one level had soldiers, and one level had sailors. We never saw one another. They kept us separated. We ate, slept on that 18 days, and hit the typhoon just before we got into Japan. And that's but anyway, I got to see a lot of things like going through Hiroshima. And a picture, it's not up there, but anyway, it was made in front of a Japanese Buddha. We got to go into Hong Kong on a couple of different times. It's just R&R. So you could do, and it's port and starboard, you either in the port or the starboard. It would be 2 days or 4 days. One day port would go on Liberty, the other day they go on Liberty. And the same thing when we get back into Japan, we go on it. And I got to go to Guam, and the only one that got off was the mail carrier. And each destroyer division had 4 in it. Inland to an air base and picked up the mail for all 4 ships and everything. And people were glad to see us when we got back. So anyway, we would come back to the States. We would go in dry dock for 3 or 4 months. I was in Bremerton, Washington. I was in Maryland and California, outside of San Francisco, and was able to go over into San Francisco. I saw a lot of things, and thankfully the last year that I was in, I've been sending 4 months home to my mother. The last time I came home to leave before I got out, I was able to purchase a car and drive it back to San Francisco. On the last my tour, last summer in 1954. In 1954, and then the ship headed back for its 4th time to Korea. They said, "Well, y'all don't get out." There was still with me. Course of engineering or radar or sonar, they had all that. It didn't make me that time when we went into that troop ship and hit that typhoon just outside of there, it was close. A lot of us were. They said if you get sick, all you got to do, you got to clean it up. So I didn't get sick, but anyway, so the ship went back overseas, and I thought I was there till January the 3rd, and we put on a destroyer tender, and we weren't doing too much there. And I had a car and had some friends and other guys going on Liberty and whatever. And so October the 30th, they said, "We're gonna let y'all out 2 months early." I grabbed that, got in my car and come home, and went down to this hardwood at the library down where the library is now, that old house, and put my discharge on the table and said, "I'm back. I've got my service done. I don't want to go to work." I went to work January the 17th with the South Central Bell, and my first job was putting the dials on the telephones in Columbia. And I retired 3 years later, and I've been retired now longer than I worked. This, come on. I, Jimmy was 18 months older than me, and I didn't tell anybody that day I was down there, and he was working out at Columbia Rock, and I'd been driving my daddy's line spreader and truck out there. Dad was the scales, this dispatch truck out there for Columbia Rock before the Presnells got it. And anyway, I didn't tell anybody, and I just went down over there. And then went home and told mother, and then I had to go through another thing. I said, I just joined the Navy, and I'm going in January 3rd. But he came in, and he didn't go then, but he went to San Diego boot camp, and then he was sent over there to Japan, Beachmasters. He was assigned to a ship, and they were going to a camp that the Japanese used during World War II, and it was 7 miles outside of Yokosuka. I'd already been there and caught my ship and cut into Yokosuka on vacation on Liberty, and I caught the bus out there 7 miles and met Noel Ammons, who was already there, been there a year, that I knew about the address. He said, they're coming in tonight. We walked over there, and they got off the bus right where they were going to be put in the barracks, and Noel reached up and got him and said, hey, Sailor, you're supposed to go with us. And he looked up and saw Noel in Japan, half the country away.
Thank you, Donnie. Our next speaker is Marvin Bailey. He was in the Navy. His rank was AO3. Come on up here, Marvin. Let me pin you.
All right. If anybody takes a sleeping pill before they go to bed, they can probably skip that sleeping pill. First thing I want to say real seriously that everybody talks about heroes. All those veterans are heroes. I guess, especially the people who've never been in, I guess we are. But I tell you what my hero was, United States Navy. When I went in, I did really have direction. I've been out of high school for 3 years. I had a pretty good job. But my good friend Larry Patton, who couldn't be here tonight because of illness, he graduated from Mechanic College in Nashville, and he thought the best thing he could do was go into service and get some experience. So he came to me and said, man, how about going in the Navy with it? He said, they'll guarantee us aviation, and we can see the world, get on the aircraft carrier and see the world. I said, well, my brother was in the Air Force, and I thought going in the Air Force if I went in. I really hadn't thought about going in. He said, oh, come on, go with me. He said, we get on the aircraft carrier and we'll see the world. I said, you sure you don't want the Air Force? He said, no, I'm going to the Navy. I said, okay. Turns out, when we got through the basic training and went to separate schools, he wound up getting duration of duty in Pensacola, Florida. He wound up getting duty for 3.5 years. So he got the Air Force duty and I got the Navy duty. So I like to tell that on him. He don't like to hear it, but I like to tell it on him. I'm sorry he couldn't be here tonight. He could probably tell you a lot more than I can. I don't have any heroic tales to tell about. I'm so fortunate. I talk about the Navy being my hero and helped me grow up a little bit and decide I need to get a direction of life or a career and just I can go a little bit. So that's what happened to me when I went in. Aircraft carrier out of A school, and the picture, 810 picture over there, I saw it, was the USS Shangri-La. And one tale, the most interesting things about my service was what happened to the old ship while I was on it. So I'll just cover a couple of those things, try not to take up too long. The old aircraft carrier, that's me on top of the main tire Pisa. I was fortunate to get to travel all over the Mediterranean, made almost 3.5 years of tour duty on the ship and 2.5 ringers. That's me standing there on, somebody said it looked like I was walking a gangway. That's on the ramp where the planes go off. That I caught them at a slow time, you can see. But there, Shangri-La, a friend of mine that was a helicopter crew member on there that flew around the ship while I was having flight safety, while I was having flight operation. he took this picture. He was in the photo unit, and he took this picture. And he's pretty sure I was standing on the flight deck, but I could locate him. So I got that picture at home on the 8x10. But the ship, you saw the destroyer up there before. One of the most interesting things about the ship, two things that happened on the 3.5 years I was on there. It was really could have been a catastrophe, but it turned out all right. And one of them cost the United States no telling how much money. But we had a destroyer like you just saw here a while ago that he was on. They went plane guarding for us on the port side. If we got ready to do flight operations, they'd speed up and come around in front of us and take up on the other side and kind of watch for us on somebody going over to drink or planes coming in to fight you or something. So that destroyer, just like the one you saw in the picture a while ago, comes I can take flight operations the next morning. And they were going to come around our bow and come up on the other side. When they got ready to speed up, come around, before it could get straightened up, but somehow they didn't know why they lost it. And he just came right in the side of our carrier, knocked a big hole in it, and he killed two guys on that ship was in the plane. And they said he missed the liquid oxygen tank by 10 feet. And the liquid oxygen tank, they said, would blow both ships out of the water, and nobody ever knew what hit them. Because that's liquid oxygen on there, of course, for the airplane pilots, that's the oxygen. So we had to get back in the port next day and patch it up and then went across the Mediterranean to dry docks and go there to get it fixed. Another thing that happened while I was on there was the guy, the machinist down below deck where the machinist ran all the engines and everything. He opened up the wrong valve and pumped several thousand, I can't remember, jumped out of the black oil. And we were hanging outside the Canadian France and French Riviera right in the middle of the French film festival. And they've got the purest, if you've ever been down to Destin and down in that area in Pensacola, you know how white the sand was. And it was whiter than that. That sand was just, and all that oil. We spent about 2 weeks filling up sandbags. When you had the duty, you knew where you was going to fill up sandbags. And they brought in bulldozers and everything to fill up all that oil. And we heard, I think it was 8 times that before they kind of kept it quiet, but it cost the United States several $1 million because it cost the French Riviera a whole bunch of money because the French Riviera, the French film festival was there, and it really hurt them. But I didn't say that. I meant to say this on the start. One thing I feel so proud about being in the Navy was I'm so thankful that I did not have to sacrifice anything while I was in there. Everything happened to me in there was for me. I don't feel like I've done hardly anything for the Navy except the pilot's crash. My job was on the flight deck. I stood on the flight deck the last year and a half. And the planes that parked here now, that's where they were launched. And my job was an ordnance safety officer, and we just had to make sure that crew members for the planes had the safety pins out and in when they were supposed to be in the plane, so the pilot wouldn't check them automatically. So we had to make sure we got the pilot's hand on his helmet and that side of things so we could pull the safety pins out of the rockets and the missiles and things. And so that's the most dangerous I ever was in the Navy. So I feel real fortunate that I got to serve without really sacrificing anything. You know, a lot of these people here tonight can't say that. And I just want to thank y'all for having this tonight. And I'm sorry I didn't have something a little smooth to present. But I'm just glad to be here and appreciate y'all coming. Thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. All right.
Our next speaker will be Spec 5 Richard Jackson. And for those of you that don't know Richard, he's not well thought of here in the library at all. Yeah, you're going to get a thumbs down. Come on up, Richard. Hook you up, bro. All right, go for it.
Let me give you a little backstory on Marvin. I knew it happened. I grew up on a jointed farm. They was raised by Dad's tobacco. Marty was up there one day chopping the weeds out of the tobacco rows, and I went over and joined it. Then on the lower end of the tobacco patch, the soil got kind of rocky, and he was chopping along, and he hit a bunch of rocks, and he threw his hoe down in the road, and when he got in his car, we joined the night. And also, Donnie and I worked the same office in Columbia in the telephone office. Later, we worked in the Shearing Department and Rose Farms. Okay, my story. My wife and I married in 1963, and we both were working for the telephone company. And then I had a classification of 1A when I registered it when I was 18. But when I married, my classification changed. I don't remember what it was, but I was exempt from being taken into service. But in the mid-60s, when the military needed warm bodies because of the Vietnam War, they drafted married men with no children. The cutoff date was 26 years of age. So they started at 26 and worked backwards, and I got caught in the second draft. On August the 3rd of 1966, the draftees in Murray County were put on a bus, and we bussed down to Fort Wayne, Georgia. And I'm not saying the military was stupid, but they didn't plan very well. Because when we got there, and I remember late in the evening or in the nighttime, about 9 or 10 o'clock, they were issuing us all our military clothes. So we got issued our clothes. In fact, I put them in that duffel bag right over there. And that duffel bag followed me all over the United States, and I was stationed on 6 different military bases in Missouri. But the bad part about Fort Benning, they had no place to put us. So they got men up out of the bed and sent them to take me and put us in their warm bed. I slept in my clothes. The next day they fed us breakfast and put us on a bus and bused us to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. At Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the living facilities was not much better than Fort Benning, except they had some barracks that hadn't been used in years. The one barrack that we were put in, they had refurbished it some. They put new windows in, because most of the barracks, the window panes were broken. There were bird poop in the floor. There was no hot water. It was terrible. But our barracks, it was livable, but we spent a lot of our time just refurbishing barracks for the first week. That's where I did my basic training at Fort Campbell. After Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I was shipped to Fort Gordon, Georgia. The living conditions were not much better there. We lived in 10 to 12 men tents, which had a wooden floor, but they had an old oil stove that most of the time didn't work. Our bathroom facilities were several yards away. There, I took additional training. And I'll give you a little funny story. There, we were going through our training, and we got a 3-day pass. And we had a taxi waiting on us at midnight. So we were going to have a 3-day pass, which would be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So we signed out, got in the taxi, they sent us down to the bus station. I walked up to the bus station, and I said, "When's the next bus leaving for Nashville?" And my old southern drawl got me in trouble. He said, "It's fixing to pull out right now." I said, "Well, give me a ticket." So I got a ticket, changed the money, got on the bus pulls out. I'm headed to Nashville. About 2 hours, I got on the bus and went to sleep. About 2 hours later, on the intercom, the bus driver says, "We're fixing to pull into Spartanburg, South Carolina." I said, "Oh me." I looked at my ticket, it was for Asheville, North Carolina. So old Southern boy can't speak. So I spent my 3-day pass riding from Spartanburg, South Carolina, into Asheville, North Carolina, into Knoxville, and finally into Nashville the following day and into Spring Hill. Okay. After leaving Fort figure out a way to get out of the rice space. And I kind of volunteered, which you could say, that I wanted to join a team of 8 men that would have TDY duty around, well, we were going to be stationed in Germany, that would be our home base. We were to climb 150-foot wooden structures and 300-foot steel towers. Not thinking that you're just a sitting duck. But in my training, I was shipped to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is 25 miles from Mexico. A little small town out of Fort Huachuca is called Cerro Vista. I've seen tumbleweeds run down the streets in Fort Huachuca in Cerro Vista. After I left Fort Huachuca, I was shipped to Shepherd Air Force Base. It's a Army training on Air Force Base, and there's where I was climbing poles. And the poles that were used for training had been used so much when you climb to the top of them and gap off, the poles just chewed up. When I went to step down, I gapped out and fell 45 foot. And that broke my left ankle and fractured the tail end of my spine. Well, I was on bed rest for 6 weeks. And after that, they sent me to Fort Hood, Texas. There I was assigned to the 141st Signal Company, which was a communication company that set up a telephone facility for whatever, and we were trained in that. Once I got to Fort Hood, and with my telephone experience, I went and found the telephone office and found the wire chief, who was a civilian that ran the telephone office. And I told him that I had prior telephone experience. I was drafted, my wife was at home, will not be coming. I live on post. I'll do anything you ask. I will do it 110% whenever and whatever you ask. In the last formation that I stood for the first signal company, the company commander came out and said, we're fixing to establish a new company that will be attached to the 198th Infantry. And you will be in Vietnam in 6 weeks. Volunteers, if we don't get them, we can. And in that one morning, in my hand, I had showed a headquarters, U.S. Army Garrison, and I worked at the telephone office the rest of my career. I don't believe in luck. I can't never explain it. But it was a blessing to me. I worked in the telephone office, and you have to imagine this. The outside facilities that come from a subdivision, whatever, comes in on cable, either on poles or underground, and it terminates on mainframe. That's this big thing here. The outside wires come in, they're terminated there. The central office equipment is terminated on the other side, and I make calls. That's the way you know. I worked a 4-hour shift. I did not have a weapon assigned. I worked with mostly civilians, and there were a few other military people in there, but not over 2 or 3 at the most. And after working the 8 to 4 shift, and they could see what I could do, I got assigned to the 4th Army installation team, where they came in and added equipment to the office, tested it out, and turned it up. And I worked on that probably 3 or 4 months. And there was a civilian that was head of the installation team. And there were Thursday meetings. This afternoon we need to go to the warehouse and pick up supplies. But he and I would go to the polling. We went all every Thursday afternoon. I thought he was my father. Because I was wearing military uniforms, of course he was dressed in civilian clothes. I got references as far as what I could do, and there were civilian contractors that would ask me to terminate cable on that mainframe. They paid me $1 a pair to terminate cable on the mainframe, and on the weekend I could make more than make the whole month in the Army. But I enjoyed it. I got a lot of experience with the telephone company. did what I told him. And I said, when I finish my tour of time, I'll get a job in this office. But I said, I got to go home. Now, before, there was an office in the back of the telephone office that had 6 or 8 women that worked the switchboard. And the Army had what they call Autobahn, which is similar to the long distance service that we know today. Where you used to dial 0 and get an operator, make a long distance call or whatever. Well, I got circuits that go all over the world. Could you put a circuit up and maybe give me my wife's telephone number? And I waited till about 10 o'clock at night when the traffic settled down. There was very little heavy traffic in the office here. She said, I'll arrange that. She said, now if we need a circuit, we'll just pull the circuit down. And I said, that's fine. So I can talk to my wife a couple of times a week on our phone. But I was glad the telephone office. But I enjoyed the time there. And I was glad to serve, even though I didn't really want to go. But it taught me a lot of things about life. It taught me how to follow our orders. And I think they call it the esprit de corps. That's a joint that you have with your fellow military personnel. And it taught me to just appreciate the simple things in life. And that's my story.
All right. Next up, we have Sergeant E5 in the Army, Edward Harmon. Now, for those of you who don't know Edward would tell you a lie. I've known him 50 plus years, so I know that. Come on up here, Edward.
I am Edward Harmon, resident of Frank Hill, OP Road. If anyone knows where that is, I live where I was born, and there all my life. This here made me join the Army in 1960. He put it on me, but it really his fault. The reason I went in, the reason we all went in, I guess, at that time, graduated in 61 from Spring Hill, didn't want to go to college, tried to get a job at the plants in Columbia back then. That's really the only place that paid good money. DuPont, Monsanto, Stauffer. First thing they'd ask you then, have you been in the service? No. Well, we can't hire you because if we do, then you'll get drafted a few years later and your time will have to go on, so we can't hire you. So Jeff and I solved that problem. We joined the Army. And we went to Chaffee, Arkansas, basic training. It was rough. First week we were there, we did nothing. Well, we thought we were really going to like this. But then they said, well, Monday we're going up on the hill. And we went up on the hill. And it was rough on the hill. The 101st Airborne Reserve out of Oklahoma, Kentucky had been called to active duty to give us our basic training. We had no pity on anybody. They ran us to death. Jeff and I and 4 other men went on a speed march one day. And the ones that were training us, when they gave out, they got in a vehicle. Another one got out and run. Jeff, I, and 4 other men were the only men that made that march out of 1,000 people. We were tough back then. But anyway, after we got with our basic training, I went to communication school in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Then Jeff went on wherever he went, and Jeff he drowned. After I got out of communication school, we went to Germany. All three of us went to Germany, but we went to a different location in Germany. And I ended up going to Baumholder, Germany in July. And it was wintertime over there then. I mean, cold, cold. We wore field jackets every day, insulated clothes, and it froze to death. The next week after I got over there, they announced they were going to ship the whole battalion back to Fort Benning, Georgia. The train to go to Vietnam. They shipped in October. They shipped 1,100 something men back to Fort Benning, Georgia. Went over on the ship, we flew back. It's right funny, we had a guy over there that was, time was almost, he spent about 2 years over there, and he was a black guy. And we went to have his fortune told before we came back. And he was telling us what the fortune teller told him before we left to come back. And the fortune teller told him that you spent 2.5 years ago, you're getting ready to return to the States. You will never make it back alive. And we were all scared to death because we were going to fly back. We left in October, probably 10, 15 degrees below zero over there. Cold, we had every clothes we could put on. Got on the plane, started back about 2 hours after we was on the plane. They announced that we had plane problems. We were going to turn around and go back. Well, that black guy was white as I was. He scared us all to death. But we made it back, got on another plane, and flew to Fort Benning, Georgia, around to Air Force Base. And Fort Benning, Georgia, we got there. We left over in Germany. It was about probably 15 degrees. We got right to Georgia, 58 degrees. We had on every insulated thing we could put on, and we liked to burn up. We got off the plane till we got to Fort Benning. We got to Fort Benning, got in the barracks. They told us not to unpack, leave everything packed up. Berlin crisis was going on, and we could be headed to Florida. Luckily, the ship that was supposed to reach certain point, they did, blow them out of the water, so they turned around and went back. So that started my 2.5 years repelling out of helicopters. They trained us for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, climb up tower, right off about 40 feet in the air. That rope behind you with a glove on, and you jump off that tower, go to the ground. They had someone on that rope. In case you got excited, threw your hands up, and stop before you hit the ground. Unfortunately, they were a few people. After we got out, they threw up the hands out of the airplane. Yes, sir. But I did that for 2.5 years. About helicopters, and we spent 95% of our time on field problems. We stayed at the back very little. My 3 years was up on February the 5th of 65. May the 1st of 65, they shipped the whole battalion to Vietnam. And Richard talked about luck. That was luck for me. I didn't mind the service. I really enjoyed it because I was an outside person anyway. When I got to Fort Benning, that was about 8 months after I went in and had 2.5 years left. And we're all called sleeve privates. No rank on that sleeve. And they said rank was frozen for 1 year. Nobody he ranked it up. Our pay was, I think, $70 a month back then. So we all stayed a slave private for a year. When they started passing rank down, for some reason, I went from a slave private to a corporal, and 30 days later, I was up sergeant. So I spent the last year up sergeant in the Army. From $78 to $215 a month for a pretty good increase in pay too. I didn't know what to do with the money I had. But my time was up. They tried to get me to re-enlist. Matter of fact, was offered $6,000 up for my money to re-enlist for 3 years. And I don't care whether it was 6,000 or 60,000. I was not going to stay in for three more years. Luckily, I didn't. Came home, got back home, and we had to sign up for unemployment back then. And I went to the unemployment office and signed up for unemployment. And they called me the next week, and I was in communications in the Army. Next week, the railroad hit, and said they had a opening for the railroad in Louisiana. So I had to go to Louisiana. They could hire me the next day. I said, I've been gone 3 years. I'm not going anywhere. So I turned out a job with the railroad. The next week or two, got called to work in DuPont, where I tried to get on before I went into Army. The reason I went in. They hired me 2 or 3 days after that. I worked there about 3 or 4 months for vacation relief, and I hated it. And then got laid off during the winter and went back in the spring for I worked a week, and I had a chance to go to construction work. And I called my supervisor and said, I told him to Bill Abernathy's name. I said, Bill, I got a chance to work for a construction company. And I said, I don't like it down here. And I said, I know I'm supposed to give a 2 weeks notice, but I'm calling you now. It's on Saturday, so you'll have somebody to do my job on the week, because I will not be there. And he said, yeah, you know you are supposed to give a 2 weeks notice, but he said, I'll tell you right now, if you decide you want to come back to work out here, so you call me, you have your job back. But I didn't go back. Went to work at pipe installation at Old Hickory DuPont up there. It was a construction work. I worked there for about 6, 8 months and got laid off. And my dad, in the meantime, had a heart attack, and I was taking care of his cows and stuff for him, and did that for a little while. And I got started doing carpet work for the local builder. Well, I put it there. I worked for him for 5 years, and then I went to work for myself, and I spent the rest of my life. But I've enjoyed service, enjoyed working. Just can't work like you used to. And I'm getting kind of like a guy at church said about a month ago. Somebody asked him, said, Billy said, what do you know? And he said, I know an awful lot, but I just can't think of none of it. I've enjoyed it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we got a real treat for you now. This will be our last speaker, so be patient. Everybody's getting antsy and ready to call, especially Dana, and ready to call a halt to this. We have Mr. Gene Isom. Mr. Isom is 94 years old, and he served during Korea and Vietnam. So without further ado, if Tech Sergeant Gene Isom will come forward. He was in the United States Air Force, and he'll tell you about his service.
Pull my cheat sheet out of there. Had to throw it as raining coming in. I'm Gene Ice. Introduced me. I was retired from the military, both the Army and the Air Force. But I didn't want either one of them. My intention to join the Marines. I tried on 2 different occasions to go to the recruiter, and he wasn't there. The Navy recruiter wasn't there. But the Army recruiter was always sitting there. He said, "Come on, I'll take the Army." But I didn't want to for that, so I tried twice. On the third time, I kind of convenience going back and forth with a little up. So on the third time I got there, I said, "Okay, I'm going to join the Army," because he wasn't there again. So I got in the Army. I spent 7 years in the Army. I got out and got married. Spent a year, about a year, maybe a little more. And then enlisted in the Air Force and spent the next 14 years in the Air Force. I joined the Army on January 4th, 1947. I went to Fort Knox, spent my infantry basic at Fort Knox, Kentucky. From there, over to I went to a tech sergeant school in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. Excuse me, I got all this stuff here. For telephone and switchboard repair. And I was there about 5 months. And from when I left the tech school, they shipped me to downtown Honolulu, Hawaii. What an assignment it was for the first time in the service. And it was just heaven there, and all I did was that time was install telephones and reverse telephones all over the island for all of the military installations and so forth. And after that, when that first enlistment was up, I re-enlisted and was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington, to the home of the 2nd Infantry Division. And that's where I was, but I wasn't attached in the division. I wasn't in the division, I was attached to it, the 205th Signal Repair Company. And I was on a telephone, on the telephone drop wire from the pole to the building. When my helper came out and he said, "We're at war." He said, "Korea, the North